Uh, Good morning. Really appreciate you all coming here today to get a 6-week update. When I had my swearing in this room 6 weeks ago, I talked about 4 key priorities that I would focus on immediately. Those 4 key priorities were hiring experienced attorneys and senior leaders to come and help lead the office and restore the Circuit Attorney's Office to its proper place in the St. Louis criminal justice system. I also talked about the need to build collaborative relationships with key partners in terms of the mayor's office, the police department, community leaders, and local prosecutors. I talked about the need to stabilize the office. And once we stabilize the office, to start building a culture of excellence and making sure that we were an office that was prepared to show up where we needed to be and prepared to do what we needed to do. And finally, I talked about the need to work to relieve the backlog of cases that were pending in the courts, as well as the backlog of cases that were waiting for review in the warrant office. I am pleased to report that in our first 6 weeks, we've made substantial progress in all of these areas. In terms of hiring experienced attorneys, as I stand here today, we have hired 14 attorneys, all of whom are former prosecutors with experience. They are attorneys whose reputation in the legal community among judges and their peers is impeccable. Decades of experience prosecuting cases in this courthouse and in Missouri courts generally. Collectively, this group of 14 attorneys, experienced prosecutors, have tried over 300 felony cases. And, you know, when I accepted this job, that was probably my biggest question. Would people return and join us to do this work? And in the first 6 weeks, I can report to you that the answer has been a resounding yes. The former circuit attorneys have a dedication to this office and really are committed to restoring it to where it was in the past and making it even better. In addition to hiring very experienced prosecutors who are going to help lead us back, we've also formed partnerships with the United States Attorney's Office and some private law firms. With the United States Attorney's Office, I've met with U.S. Attorney Saylor Fleming, and we've reached an agreement that her office is going to have a number of attorneys cross-designated here in the circuit court for the city of St. Louis. Those attorneys are going to keep a docket of 20 homicide cases. That's where we need the most help, our most serious cases. We have a current backlog of 250 pending homicides, and that's where we need the most help, and that's where the United States Attorney's Office is going to step in and partner with us. By them being willing to keep a running docket of 20 homicide cases, it's going to give us additional capacity and also a lot of flexibility as we work our way through these pending homicides. In addition to partnering with the U.S. Attorney's Office, we've had former circuit attorneys, experienced prosecutors who are now at private law firms. We've had them agree to come back, 3 of them. Among them, they are, they've tried dozens of homicide cases and are equally experienced and prepared to help us. They've each agreed to handle a docket of 10 homicide cases. So collectively, between the U.S. Attorney's Office and the private firm lawyers we have helping us out, that gives us an additional capacity to carry 50 homicide cases, which is tremendous help to us. And like I said, in addition to just providing that additional capacity, it also provides us with additional flexibility. When I accepted this position and took over the office, I knew that we were facing a lot of challenges in terms of our work in the courts and dealing with pending cases. One thing I hadn't focused on as much that I've come to focus on as I've spent my first 6 weeks in the office is that there's also a lot of work to be done in terms of the support staff and the administrative infrastructure in the office. And we've been working on that as well. In terms of support staff, which is going to be key to the ability for our lawyers to come to court and do what they need to do, we've made an emphasis, and a point of emphasis has been to really rebuild the victim services office. We've hired 2 very experienced victim services advocates. We had a victim service advocate in sexual assault cases start on Monday, and we have another victim services advocate starting in 2 weeks who's going to be a supervisor for us in victim services. So we'll continue to build and focus there. That's something that is going to be critical to our success. In addition, to lead our support staff, we've brought back a very experienced paralegal who is going to supervise and help us rebuild the support staff to support the lawyers who are coming to court. To the extent in the past you've heard about discovery issues and that sort of thing, those are issues that are handled at the support staff level, and increasing the support staff and the effectiveness of that support staff is going to have a huge impact there. Building collaborative relationships. Started that focus on day one, really. Mayor Jones has been a partner in these 6 weeks. I think I had my first meeting with Mayor Jones and her staff a few days after I started. I've been over to the mayor's office 2 or 3 times already in 6 weeks. We've had a lot of good meetings talking about crime prevention and talking about ways that they can support us. I've been at a number of community functions with members of her staff, so we've been working together very well. We've also restored the relationship between our office and the city councilor's office. They are back representing us in connection with matters where that's appropriate, so that's a relationship that has also been restored. With the police department, Chief Tracy. Had a great meeting with Chief Tracy a couple weeks after I started. We met for 2 hours over at police headquarters. I got a tour of the Real Crime Center. We had a great wide-ranging discussion about places where our offices could work together and where we could improve our effectiveness. And in fact, I'm scheduled to meet with Chief Tracy today after this press conference. I hope that these meetings can become a monthly thing and that we can stay in touch that way. But more importantly than me and Chief Tracy meeting and making sure our offices are collaborating and working together, we've seen increased collaboration across the board. Reopening the Warren office has been a key part of the increased collaboration between our office and the police department. That really gives an opportunity for us to interact on a daily basis with frontline police officers as they come in and apply for cases. So that's a place where we've really seen increased collaboration and working together. In addition, my senior staff has had a number of meetings with senior staff at the police department on various issues. So that relationship is strong and getting stronger, and we really look forward to continuing to work closely together with SLMPD. I've already talked about the fact that we have a great relationship with the United States Attorney's Office. I've been over and met with U.S. Attorney Sailor Fleming on a couple of occasions. We've also been working very closely with St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. Have had a number of meetings with Wesley Bell And the St. Louis County prosecutors have been really key to our success in that they've been helping us bridge the gap as we're bringing on new attorneys. There's a number of court appearances that are required on a daily basis here just to kind of keep the system moving because of the lack of attorneys. We really had trouble covering that, and St. Louis County has really stepped in and loaned us some prosecutors to help us address those needs in the short term. In addition, St. Louis County has provided us a full-time employee to work with us in the warrant office, and that's really been extremely helpful to us in terms of relieving the backlog in the warrant office. St. Charles County, Joe McCullough has been very helpful to us. He has loaned out one of his prosecutors, Jane Darst, who is a former first assistant here, and she's been really integral and helpful to us in terms of working on the administrative issues and rebuilding the administrative side of the office that I've talked about. We've also gotten a lot of support from the Missouri Office of Prosecuting Services. Daryl Moore has been very helpful. They've provided us support in victim services. They've provided us support in the warrant office, and they've provided us support in terms of working on our case management system, and they're going to continue to provide that support as we go forward. So we've been very grateful for the help we've received from MOPS. The Attorney General's office has been helpful. They have agreed to take on all of our post-conviction relief briefing. That's key because it permits our prosecutors to focus on other things and gives them greater bandwidth. Franklin County Prosecutor's Office has recently agreed to send down 2 prosecutors every Friday, experienced prosecutors to work in the warrant office and help relieve the backlog. So this is exactly the type of collaboration that I knew would be necessary for us to begin rebuilding the Circuit Attorney's Office, and I am happy to report that we have received it, and it's continuing. And I should also say that we've spent a considerable amount of time in the first 6 weeks rebuilding our relationship with the media. We believe that working with you is an important part of what we do. We are a public department providing a public service, and your job is to keep the public informed, and we think it's important that we work together and be collaborative in doing that. So we've also spent a fair amount of time on that. My third priority that I discussed was stabilizing the office and beginning a process of building a prosecutor's office that we could all be proud of and that can provide the services that the St. Louis community needs. I feel like in the first 6 weeks, we have achieved the first part of that, which is we have stabilized things. And we are now functioning in a more systematic manner and have processes in place and case coverage that is effective. We now begin the hard work of building the culture of excellence that I've talked about. I've talked with our attorneys and I've said, let's start by every single day, everything we do, let's do it with the standard being the pursuit of excellence. When you go to a status conference hearing, a bond hearing, whatever, the smallest matter, let's focus on, are we doing this in the best possible way? Are we going to leave the court with the impression that these attorneys came prepared and presented, even on the most simple matters, in the best possible way? By focusing on the small things and instilling that culture of excellence, that's how we're going to get where I see this office going, which is being one of the best prosecuting attorneys' offices, not only in Missouri, but in the country. In achieving that, we're going to really have a big focus on training. And in that training, it's going to help that we have all of these excellent experienced attorneys coming back to lead us. But it's also going to help that we have attorneys coming in from the U.S. Attorney's Office and private practice who have tremendous experience, and our attorneys are going to have a chance to work with them and see how they work up cases and hopefully have a chance to try cases with them in court. And that's going to all be part of our training process. So a big emphasis on training, making sure that the attorneys who were here when maybe the senior leadership wasn't here to provide that training are able to get that training now. In terms of clearing the backlog, like I said today, when I was sworn in, we had approximately 250 pending homicides. That's about where we remain today. In addition to the 250 homicide, we have over 3,000 other felonies pending. That's a huge backlog of cases. We have begun to address that. When I was sworn in, we had 21 attorneys who were trial staff going to court and working on cases. As I've discussed, we've added to that trial staff considerably through the hiring of 14 former prosecutors who have a wealth of experience, and they're going to help us work through the backlog. The first step in that process is we've been getting case assignments to where our most experienced, most effective prosecutors are handling the most serious cases. And we've already seen some success there. Since I've been sworn in, we've had convictions, 2 murder-first convictions. The most recent coming last week in the case of Ollie Lynch. That case was tried by Marvin Tier, and we got a murder-first conviction, and the defendant in that case is facing life without parole. In terms of addressing the backlog in the warrant office, we've done some very good work there already. When I was sworn in, we estimate that the backlog in the warrant office was approximately 4,500 pending applications. And in the course of the 6 weeks since Steve Capizzi has taken over the warrant office, we've reduced that backlog from 4,500 to approximately 2,000. Now, that reduction reflects kind of making decisions on some low-level felonies and misdemeanors where the statute of limitations had run. It reflects getting rid of some duplicate applications that were in the warrant office. It reflects getting rid of some cases where the evidence just wasn't there, so we knew we weren't going to meet them. So it's been good that we've been able to quickly review and remove 2,500 cases. Now we're down to 2,000 or so, where we think that the process is going to be much more complex and move a little slower, but we will continue to work on those. And with the help of local prosecutors coming down, helping us conduct that review, we hope that we're able to get through those additional 2,000 cases by the end of this year. My priorities for the rest of the year. Obviously, I'm going to continue to focus on hiring experienced attorneys who can come in and help us out right away. Everyone we've hired so far are people who can hit the ground running and be an immediate assistance to us as we work through the tremendous number of pending cases. I have an interview with another attorney today, and I'm hopeful that we'll be adding an additional 2 attorneys in the next week or so. So that process continues. In addition to that, we're going to start recruiting younger attorneys. It's time to start returning to the process of recruiting attorneys straight out of law school, having them come to this office and receive the training that will make them excellent trial lawyers, and they can grow into that in this office. So this fall, I hope to have 3 to 5 lawyers join us straight out of law school and begin that process of building the next generation of circuit attorney prosecutors. So that's going to be a focus as we move forward. And of course, with those young attorneys, there's going to be a focus on having a training process and program in place that is one of the best for young prosecutors in the office, in the country. And by doing that, we will make this job attractive to the most talented law students. I am very proud of the team that we are assembling, the great dedicated attorneys who have returned to this office to help restore it. I am proud of the work that we are doing, and I am excited about our prospects going forward. And with that, I am prepared to take questions.
Yesterday, you announced that you have appointed Booker Shaw to review the Christopher Dunn case. Can you speak a little bit about why you made that decision and why you chose Judge Shaw?
Yeah, so incredibly grateful that Judge Shaw accepted the appointment and that his law firm, Thompson Coburn, is supporting him in that. For me, it was an easy decision. Going forward, at some point, I would like it if our office had a conviction integrity unit that could handle this type of matter. At this point, as we're wrapping up and dealing with a tremendous number of pending cases, I did not want to distract senior people on my team from the work at hand. And so the ability to look externally to someone with the expertise of Judge Shaw to assist me in conducting that review and advise me in connection with making a decision regarding whether or not we should go forward with a motion to vacate, that was an easy decision for me. It's preserving our ability to continue to focus on the cases pending in court, but it's also providing me with the support and expertise I need to make the right decision in that case.
Just last week, we reported on...
Why is that review separate from one that has already been done needed? Why did you need to have another review of that case?
So if you look back at the file and you look at the motion that was filed by former Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner, you will see that what that motion essentially says is it says that I, Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner, have conducted a review, and I, Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner, I'm prepared to represent to this court that there is clear and convincing evidence of actual innocence. I, on the day I was sworn in, had never undertaken such a review. I could not make those representations to the court. Kim Gardner was no longer Circuit Attorney, obviously, so it was necessary and required that we withdraw the motion to vacate and that I conduct my own review.
When Governor Parson announced your appointment, he said that when the higher crime rate in St. Louis affects the entire state. Would you agree to that? And what would be examples of that, how crime in St. Louis affects the rest of the state?
Well, I think violent crime anywhere has an impact on the entire region. I think St. Louis City as an engine of economic development and activity for the entire state of Missouri, obviously when you have a violent crime or crime problem in St. Louis, that's going to have an impact and reverberations throughout the state. So I think that's very clear. And I've seen that investment and the commitment to assisting us as we restore the Circuit Attorney's position in the criminal justice system in the city of St. Louis. I've seen people, like I said, from across the region reach out to help. So we have Franklin County, St. Charles County, St. Louis County. They all recognize that crime in the city of St. Louis impacts everyone, and they're willing to reach out and help us.
Just last week, we reported on 2 cases that were disposed of in unusual ways because of the ages of the cases, and they were so apparently neglected by your predecessor. Could you put some further context on how many cases might be so far gone you can't save them, and what's that going to look like in the coming weeks and months?
So I will say that how we're approaching it is when I was sworn in and the day I entered the office, you had trials coming up, you had cases pending, and they were kind of coming at us fast and furious. and we were having to deal with them and kind of triage. In just 6 weeks, we kind of gotten to the point where we're getting out ahead of it a bit more. Mary Pat Carl, coming in as Chief of Homicide, has done a great job really getting cases reassigned, getting cases that were assigned to attorneys that had left the office reassigned to attorneys who have joined us. So we've begun the process of becoming more systematic in looking at the cases and getting out ahead of them a bit. So that's going to be our approach. Our approach is going to be, whereas when I got here, we were maybe dealing with cases that were pending for trial on Monday, we were dealing with them on the Wednesday before. We're already to the point where, we're maybe looking a month out. Where you want to be on those cases, you want to be dealing with those cases 2-3 months out. And that's where we're getting to. And the process of looking at those cases is what prosecutors' offices have always done. You look at the case, you assess the facts, you look at witness cooperation and what you can prove in the court of law. We now have the attorneys who have the expertise and experience to do that very effectively and efficiently. And once you make that assessment, you do what prosecutors are supposed to do, which is you make the tough calls that are necessary. You take the cases to trial where you can, like we did last week and got a murder first conviction. Where you don't have the evidence, you equally have the duty to come into court, say to the judge and the defendant, we don't have the evidence to proceed with this matter, therefore we're going to dismiss. So that's what we're going to do.
What was the biggest surprise to you when you got into the office? The biggest gap that you didn't know was out there or existed?
So when I came into the office, I had read a lot of your reports about what was going on in the office. I had talked to people who gave me some information about their familiarity about what was going on in the office. But most of that discussion was all about what was going on in terms of the office handling cases that were pending in court. So I can tell you that on the day that I was sworn in and walked into that office, nothing would have surprised me because I was really prepared for whatever was there. What I was not as prepared for and didn't consider as much, and there quite frankly wasn't as much interest in or discussion about, was the fact that there's a whole administrative side of the office. And there's work that the Circuit Attorney's Office does in terms of managing Department of Revenue matters, child support matters, victim services. There's just lots of administrative functions that I hadn't really considered when I took the position, but I quickly kind of recognized when I got to the office that we're going to have to do a lot of work there too. So I've been spending a tremendous amount of my time kind of working on matters that aren't visible to the public, kind of back office matters. We've got huge needs in terms of IT infrastructure. So those sorts of things were things that I probably hadn't given as much thought to as I should have.
You mentioned that more than 2,000 warrant applications have been cleared. What's your assessment of what the consequence was of letting that case backlog get so high? Have a lot of cases that were potentially prosecutable just had to be thrown out because they sat there so long?
So there's a saying among attorneys that no case gets better with time. So when you let cases age, one result is going to be your evidence gets worse. Witnesses who may have been prepared to come forward may now not be prepared to come forward. They may have moved out of state. They may have passed away. So you do have those problems that are created by any backlog. That's why currently what we're doing on our cases is we're making charging decisions on cases on the day that they're submitted. It is the exception, the rare exception, where we take a case and take it under advisement and continue to consider it for more than just the day it's submitted. That's how, when you have a prosecuting attorney's office that has the volume that we have, you've got to operate that way. You've got to make your charging decisions very timely. So Sure, there's been some cases where we're not going to be able to go forward because of the age of the cases and the evidentiary issues that develop because of the age of the cases. How many that is, we're not that far in the assessment, but we will deal with it as we come to it.
Would you say the office was in worse condition than you ever could have imagined when you walked in on the first day? So now that you've had 6 weeks to really get under and behind in the weeds and everything?
I would say that the office, when I took over, was a law office that was in distress. And that's what I anticipated. That's what I knew I signed up for. So, you know, we have begun the process of restoring the office. One thing I was very encouraged by is the dedication and the quality of the attorneys that were in the office. I didn't know what to expect in terms of the existing trial staff. I didn't know any of them. During my first 6 weeks, one thing I have had the opportunity to do that I made a point of is, you know, one advantage of having such a small trial staff is I really took the time to sit down personally with each of them and have a discussion about where they saw the office, what their aspirations were for their career, and how they thought they could help lead us back. And so those have been great discussions. We had a great group of attorneys here, and that was something that I was very encouraged by.
How
When
much
you look
focus
at the-
has been
when you-
moving forward? Is there anything, though, in your 6 weeks that you've seen from the previous administration that you believe warrants additional attention or possibly an investigation?
That's not something that I'm looking at. I mean, my focus is moving forward. So I'm purely forward-looking, and that's what I'm focused on.
How many attorneys do you want to get up to? What's your goal for this office?
So when the office was fully staffed, it was approximately 60 attorneys. Currently, with the 14 attorneys we've hired, the 21 trial staff we had, that probably puts us at like 35 trial staff. In addition to that, we have attorneys in child support who don't go to court and operate on kind of a different budgetary structure. So that puts us at about 39 or 40 attorneys. I hope to add 3 to 5 young attorneys in the fall to be kind of our class of attorneys who are going to grow and get trained with us. So that would put us at like 45 or so. And after that, I haven't sat down and looked at the numbers, but you want to get to where you have manageable caseloads. Like I said, I think we're at the point where we've stabilized things, but our attorneys are still carrying caseloads in terms of homicides, violent crimes, and even general felonies that are unsustainable. So right now, the attorneys are going above and beyond to carry these caseloads, and we got to get the number of attorneys up to a level where we can have reasonable caseloads and where we can be really effective on all our cases.
When you look at the goals that you're trying to execute against, what's a reasonable time frame to feel like you've accomplished them? I guess the other way of asking this is, will next summer be a time frame where you feel like that's something you've done, and will that factor into a decision about seeking the office yourself?
So first I would say our work in getting this office to where we want to be will never be done. I am sincere when I say that my vision for this office is that we be one of the finest prosecuting attorney's offices in the country. So that work is going to be continuing. It's going to be hard, and it will never be done. In terms of returning the office to the place where we are once again an effective part of the criminal justice system in the city of St. Louis, I feel like by stabilizing the office, we're getting there. I feel like we're close to being there already. I would certainly hope that by the end of the year, we are there, and that I think when you do a year-over-year comparison of the circuit attorney's activity in this courthouse it's going to be very favorable. So, you know, we are trying to return the office to effectiveness immediately, if not sooner. So that's something we're working on and have gone a good ways towards accomplishing. In terms of me seeking the office, I would say that obviously the success that we have in the near term is something that I would consider. Whether or not I'm being effective, whether or not the office is moving in the right direction is something that I would consider. But I'm still at the point where I haven't given that much thought exactly how I would go about making that decision. So I'll leave it at that. I haven't considered that much yet. I've been focused on other things.
One last question.
Well, I'm just gonna, sorry, it's kind of a numbers question, but you said that you want to improve the homicide caseloads of prosecutors. I know at the end of the Gardner administration, there were prosecutors that had more than, 100 homicides. Where are those caseloads now? About how many homicides do prosecutors have?
And this is a rough number, but I would suspect that our prosecutors in the circuit attorney's homicide unit are probably at this point carrying between 60 and 65 cases. And as I discussed, in terms of external help with the U.S. Attorney's Office and private attorneys coming in as special assistant prosecutors, we have, collectively they're carrying 50 cases, right? So that just gives you a sense of the weight of carrying those kind of caseloads.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.